Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love talking to creative people and how they do it, why they hang in there, how they have these long, storied careers. And today my guest is a very creative person. His name is Brian Aris, and he is a esteemed photographer. He's basically photographed everybody in rock and roll and pop music that you can imagine, from Madonna to Mick Jagger to everyone, basically. And he has a coffee table book out called Celebrating George, 3 Decades of George Michael Through the Lens. So he photographed George Michael many times. The first time was when George was with Andrew Ridgeley as part of Wham. And he talks about his experiences shooting George. He talks about why George Michael was one of a kind, and the photographs are amazing. And you can see George's evolution as an artist in these pictures, and some of them are familiar to you. You're like, oh, I remember that from the Careless Whisper era or whatever, but then there were some that I had never seen before. There's this wonderful spread when Brian shot George in Saint-Tropez, and it feels like you're on holiday with George Michael. So I love talking to Brian about this book and about his career. I could have talked to him all day. There is a moment in the interview where I'm asking about Bob Geldof's wedding to Paula Yates, who is a TV presenter in the UK, and the pictures in the book are really fun. And then Brian sort of refers to what happened to Paula after that, and I wasn't. It didn't come to mind immediately because perhaps because I'm American, but he clears it up. But Paula Yates, after she was with Bob Geldof, was with Michael Hutchence from INXS, and she ended up overdosing in 2000, and it's very tragic. So when we get to that part of the interview, that's kind of what he's referring to, and I do follow it up and get some clarification. But yeah, we do talk about that a bit. Before we get to the interview, though, I want to remind you, this podcast is brought to you by me. I pretty much do it because I love it. But if you want to support me and help me cover my expenses, that would be awesome. You could go to DennisAnyone.net and leave a tip in my virtual tip jar. There's also a thing called Buy Me a Coffee. So you can just buy me a coffee, which is cool. Something else you can do is I have a spin-off podcast on Patreon and Substack called Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay. Right now it's free because I'm not posting as much as I was originally because I have this full-time job. But it's a great way to get a little more content and to support me. And just search Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay on Patreon or Substack. Something else really fun that is coming up is there's a thing called the Live Love Podcast Cruise. You know, I'm always talking about Derek and Romaine and DNR Studios. I'm part of their stable of shows. Well, 3 of the shows are going to be on this cruise in February of 2027 from the 7th to the 14th. And it's going to be leaving out of Los Angeles. It goes to Mexico. It's 7 days. The podcasts are my show, Dennis Anyone. We've also got Gayish, which is a very fun show. And, of course, the king and queen of all of it, Derek and Romaine. So if you want to get away and hang out on a cruise, go to DNR Travel and check that out. We're going to do, I told him I'd do all of my dog and pony shows on the ship, like You Don't Know My Life or maybe the Mismatch Game. All right, enough of the plugs. Here is my... Joining me now from Kent in England, it's Brian Aris. He is the photographer and the writer behind the beautiful new book, Celebrating George, 3 Decades of George Michael Through the Lens. It's gorgeous. And I'm a huge George Michael fan, so I'm so excited to talk to you. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
You photographed George Michael many times, and in the book, unless I misinterpret this, you said he was your favorite, and you photographed everybody. Is that right? Is he your favorite, or is there something about him that's really close to your heart?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of factors, really. I mean, he was a brilliant man, obviously a great talent, that wonderful voice, but not somebody that got photographed an awful lot, you know,
right.
And certainly I was thrilled that for quite a few years we were able to work together. So he certainly is up there. He's certainly up there right in the top couple of my favourites. It's difficult when you've been around as long as I have. You have relationships with people over the years and they become favourites. Debbie Harry, for example, I loved to death. But yeah, George definitely registered big time. And of course, I'll just say very quickly, he was a great benefactor and kept that very quiet, which personally I really admire. And it didn't really come out until after his death, which I thought was an absolute tribute to the man.
Yeah, you would hear these stories afterwards about him doing like wonderful deeds, big and small, for people that he didn't know. And there were a lot of these stories. And that is so not typical for celebrity. If sometimes they'll do great things, but they want the credit, they want the name on the building. He was really different than other celebrities in that way.
Absolutely, which makes him very special, and I'm full of admiration. Because, as you say, too many egos go out there looking for recognition when they make these so-called charitable acts, but he never did that, and he did a lot of good, gave away an awful amount of money, and I thought that was remarkable, and as you rightly say, quite rare in the music business.
Did you sense that about him as you were photographing him and getting to know him a little bit, that he was doing that, or was it a surprise to you after it came out?
It was a surprise to me. I had a little inkling because when we did Ladies and Gentlemen, the album cover, I sort of heard the whispers that he was going to give all of the royalties to Terence Higgins Trust. So that kind of gave you a little hint that maybe, there was stuff going on, but I'm not one to pry, and I certainly wouldn't have asked. But that was the first inclination I had that he was generous in that respect.
Well, you write in the book that George didn't like being photographed generally. Why do you think you guys worked well together? What was it about you that he said, "Yeah, I'll go back to Brian again"?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I met George with Wham when.
Yeah, you write about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd been photographing. I had Billy Joel in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I had a session with Mick Jagger that went on for about 4 hours, a solo session. And at the end of that, I was really happy with that session. And all I knew, we'd been booked at 6 o'clock to take pictures of two boys called Wham. I didn't know much about them. So, we did the first session. I think I said in the book that I thought Andrew was the star because he had great bone structure and, he was quite confident. George was less so.
Right.
So I came away from that session thinking, well, first of all, the only duo I knew was Simon and Garfunkel, so I couldn't see how they topped Simon and Garfunkel.
Right.
So, that's how I was still preoccupied with Mick.
Yeah.
But of course, it became so quickly clear that the Adidas look and the string vest that I thought were all a bit odd really touched a nerve with the public, and they loved it and embraced that look. Which some people have said, well, it was an era where punk and all of that stuff was going on, and it was refreshing to see this glamour,
Yeah.
I didn't quite get that, if I'm honest with you. But they came back for a second session a few months afterwards, and boy, oh boy, was there a difference. George had an Armani suit, his hair was different, he looked great, and it became obvious very quickly that he was going to be the star.
Right. Well, you write about that first session with Wham that Andrew had what you thought of as more star quality, but George knew what he wanted to do. Like he was behind the clothes and he had he wasn't just going with the flow. He had opinions, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that as the session went on, we're talking pre-digital here, so I used to shoot Polaroids quite a lot and show the artist the Polaroids,
right?
Gain their confidence and make them and understand that they were happy with what we were doing. And it was George that took more interest, and George had more commentary about it. So at the end of that session, I thought, well, maybe, I don't know. I still thought Andrew had the look. Second session in, no, completely changed my mind and realized I'd been wrong and that the man was George.
Right. And that second session with the Armani suits, he had the bigger hair, he had the lighter hair. Yeah. And it's very Careless Whisper era. It's very they were huge at that time. So those photographs were everywhere.
They were massive by then, massive. And in a very short period of time, by the way, months, they'd become absolutely global. They were really, really big.
How was he on the set with assistants and people around? Was he gregarious? Was he kept to himself? And did that change as he got more and more famous?
I don't think much changed, I've always said the word I've used a lot is conflicted.
Yeah.
Because I always felt George, history has shown us that as time went on, he took on the record company. He became, quite confident in that area. But I always felt that that side of the business, the public adulation and the fame, I think that sort of wore off quite quickly with him. And I think he really wanted that private side more.
Yeah.
But realized actually that when you caught fame at that level, very hard to have privacy. And I think, so I always felt he was quite conflicted. And so in the sessions, I think what happened, I think we did a session in 87, I think it was, which was certainly my favorite session because it was just George and my assistant in the studio. We had, stylists and stuff, but he was so relaxed and trying so many different things, so many different looks, different poses. A long session was very, very productive. So looking back on it, I think that was probably apart from Saint-Tropez, I think that was my favorite session because we were able to get so many different, looks from George and looks that he was happy with. So I think I'm going along here with a guy that was growing up, going from being a pretty young man with Wham to really finding his feet, I suppose you'd say, and then becoming more and more confident, prepared to try different things. And so that session became quite important to me. And as time went on, that became less apparent. You couldn't really experiment. He started to develop his look, the way he wanted to be, found his look. And I think after Ladies and Gentlemen, it was pretty fixed at that point. He'd established what he wanted to do, and so every session started to look a bit like that, one way or another.
Yeah, he knew what he wanted to do, and he was kind of playing it safe and less experimenting. You mentioned the day that you had Billy Joel, Mick Jagger, and Wham. You include the diary in the book, and it's just wild to think about that. Like, I mean, yeah, after shooting Billy Joel and Mick Jagger, it's probably time for a drink or a meal or something, but you had another session with these two young men. I just wild to see that. When you take pictures, do you know if something's a good shot when you're shooting it, or is it when it comes out and you see the contact sheet or the actual photograph, or do you go, okay, that's it?
I'm
sure it varies, but like
it's interesting when you look at contact sheets, because now everything's digital now, right. So it's slightly different. But then you were on film, and so you really didn't. I relied a lot on Polaroids,
right?
So and showing the artist the Polaroids was a very important key for me because it brought them into the session completely, gave them confidence, and I think that was really an important factor. I talked a lot as I can. I directed the shots a lot, which has always been commented on. People like that.
Yeah.
I hate the idea. I mean, you've been photographed, I've been photographed. And when people point a camera at you and don't speak to you, or they might say smile, it's really hopeless. I mean, that's not the way to go about it. And so it doesn't matter who the person is. With actors particularly, by the way, they love being directed.
Yeah.
So I think this idea of, and it distracts from, what you're actually doing, having a camera pointed at you from a very short space away. So I think that was part of it. And I think the other part was I always spent more time in the dressing room talking before the shoot than actually shooting.
That's interesting.
It's so psychologically important because I'm sorry, I just think having photographs taken is quite an intrusive and difficult thing for almost everybody, including famous people who maybe are good on stage or happy in front of a camera on a film set. But one-to-one in a studio, and the camera can be quite close to you at stages doing headshots, is quite intimidating. So I think getting to know that person and having some feel for how they are, are they nervous, are they overconfident, are they whatever, is very important. And they're getting to know you. So you're not a stranger. You're not a stranger when you go in to actually do the pictures. You've got some relationship. And I think that was crucial, really, and is crucial today.
Are there words that you use a lot when it's going well? Do you say, oh, that's gorgeous, gorgeous? Or do you have like little trademark encouraging things that you say that are like your things?
I think if you ask people I photograph, they get fed up with me saying chin up, chin down, left, which is I think they get that. That's probably no. There's no. It's not like blow up,
Yeah.
Wow, baby, that's great. No, none of that.
That's not your vibe.
That's not my vibe. No.
Does George Michael have a good side?
Well, that's the other thing.
Or would he say he does?
Oh, well, everyone does. They always say, please shoot my good side. And I always say, which side is that? And they'll say, this side. And I go, okay, let's do the other side and see how that looks. You've got to challenge that, because people look in a mirror and they see a certain reflection that
right.
it doesn't bear any resemblance to what you take when you take photographs. So they'll often have this curious thing about their good and bad sides. You've got to say, hey, here's your bad side. What do you think? And quite often it'll be, wow, well, that's a surprise.
Right.
Not with George. George, as time went on, George definitely decided, that there would be one side that he preferred. And I think the Ladies and Gentlemen album cover is a classic. And I think I tell the story in the book where his sister, Mel, was standing beside me, and we had reflectors and one light, and, it was a pretty simple setup. And I did 2 Polaroid. He looked great. He had this, for me, a newer look. He looked absolutely brilliant. He discarded almost everything, and we just went with black and white.
Yeah.
And he stood in front of the reflectors, and I said, let's shoot one straight to the camera, which we did, and let's shoot one, which side? He said, I want to shoot one looking off. I went, okay. So we shot the one looking off. We didn't shoot any film. I pulled the 2 Polaroids, and I sort of, as I pulled them, I showed them to Mel, and she sort of whispered in my ear, the left one, and I wanted the right one. And so I put them down. He went, that's the album cover, gave it back to me, and it was the left one. And Mel had a big grin on her face. She knew so well what he liked. And that was the shot. And I tried to persuade him, well, we did that shot first. And I said, can we just do some direct to the camera? Because I love eye contact,
Right.
He did some, but not the album cover was looking off to the side.
That's what it ended up. He had a vision. He had a vision for his thing. And I remember watching the documentary about Wham, and George was very competitive. Like, he wanted to be number one, and on the charts and stuff like that. He had that side of him, but then he also had this side that was conflicted about fame and didn't love the spotlight. And it was all these contradictions. Like, he wanted to have a number one record, but he would donate the money to charity. Like, it was this crazy contradicted stew of different things. Do you think conflict is a good word? I think so. Well, they seem at odds, like the paradoxes with him. And maybe everyone has that, but with him it seems more pronounced or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And
I think that became more apparent as time went on,
Yeah. I got to see the tour in, I think it was like 2006, 2007, around then. He came to the U.S. I remember he had these big video screens that were really cool. And my biggest memory of that tour was the gratitude. He kept thanking the fans for sticking with him. And he kept, because he goes, I know I can be frustrating to be a fan of, because he wouldn't come out with a lot of music, or he didn't do videos for a while. There was that huge mess with Sony, but the gratitude he felt that we were all there. I remember him saying, it's not cheap to come to a concert, and you got babysitters. And that's what I remember more than anything, was feeling his gratitude, It was moving.
I think that's why I've been doing book signings here in the UK. And frankly, I've been absolutely astonished. I was due to do 1. I've done 4 now. Books. I've had to go back because we ran out of books at the gallery 3 times. And we've had queues of fans. They are amazing, his fans. I mean, I can't tell you. We've had economically, I think it's not just in the UK, it's around the world. We've had a pretty grim time for a few months in the UK economically.
Yes.
The galleries have been doing okay, but nowhere near what they were doing. And so everyone's been a little bit in the doldrums. Having the book come out and going to do the book signing has been extraordinary, because it's so lifted the spirits of all of us, because the fans coming through those doors have just been wonderful. They've been very complimentary, which from my point of view is lovely, but they're also so genuinely, really serious George fans. We've had people walk through the door. I was in the gallery earlier today, just for a very short period of time, And they said that yesterday a chap walked in with his daughter. They thought she was probably only about 18, 19, and she burst into tears. They were playing a George Michael track. She walked in, she started looking at the pictures, and she started to cry. And I was amazed because she's 18 or 19, you know. The fans coming through have been older. They've been 30, 40 through to 60s, you know. So it was lovely to know that a young fan had come in and been affected that much. But they are so driven. They are so staunchly George fans. You know, we've got a group called the George Michael Lovelies, and we joke about everyone's a lovely because they come through the door with such a fabulous attitude, and they adore George to the point of me being quite surprised by the passion, you know.
Right, and that's something you've noticed as you've been out there with the book. And it's been a bit of a surprise.
I've known he's got a following, obviously, because when we put out a small edition of a coffee table book a couple of years ago, and by virtue of the fact that it was a very limited edition, it was reasonably expensive. And I had hundreds of texts and emails through the website with people saying, please, 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 we can't afford it. Can we have a fan book? And that's driven us to go to the publisher and say, well, can we produce one? And they have. They produced this wonderful, you know, it's really beautifully done, and they produced it at a really affordable price. And I think the fans have loved that, and I'm delighted. You know, it's rewarding to see them come in. So many of them have come and bought books and sent me emails. I've had South Korea, Philippines, obviously the States, although it's out in the States. Australia, can we have it in Australia? Well, that's up to the publishers, not me. So it's all around the world, his fan base, you know, and they are truly special.
Do you have a favorite photo in the book?
Oh, that's a very difficult question.
I have a more specific phrasing of that might spark something. Do you have a favorite photo that isn't the most un-George Michael photo? That isn't really your typical... That's a little bit different. It's a little different, a different side of him maybe that you caught. I thought there's a picture of him playing tennis, and I was like, oh, that's not what I think of when I think of George Michael, and he looks like he's having a great time.
Yeah, well, that session he was very relaxed, and it was in the south of France. I suppose if there was one picture, it would be the picture in the Mercedes.
Yeah.
Where we were going to go to the beach and just have a wander along and take a few snaps, you know. And I was just joking, saying we're going to drive down. It was in Saint-Tropez, and I'd been to Saint-Tropez a lot in the past. And I said to him, are you serious? We're going to go drive into Saint-Tropez to Pampelon Beach or wherever it is in a drop-head Mercedes, and you're not going to get noticed. And he burst out laughing, and one of his pals was saying, yeah, go for it. It'll be fine. And it actually was, you know. I mean, we walked along the beach, we did a few pictures, we sat down on the beach and did some stuff. One or two people kind of waved.
Right.
But they gave him his space, and that was magical because Saint-Tropez, you know, can be quite a hectic place, and not, as you know, if you go into the quayside, you're going to get photographed. We stayed away from there. So I think that was one of the joys he had, that place gave him privacy. People didn't bother him, and he was able to really relax.
Right, and it comes through in the photos. He's like laying by the pool, reading a book or a magazine, and what was his goal with that photo shoot? Why were you brought there at that time? Because they have a totally different vibe than the others.
Yeah, it was an opportunity for one of the American magazines to try and get some different pictures. So we went down, had some space, some time. You know, I liked Saint-Tropez. And just really do a few snaps, you know, and that's how it panned out. But because I think he was so relaxed and chilled, it made some very good images.
Yeah, you just feel like you're on holiday with George Michael. It's kind of cool. You photographed Band-Aid. Yours is the shot that's on the back of the 45 record, right? If you bought it at the time, that group shot was yours, right?
It is, yeah, the group shot. Yeah. Bob asked me. I'd been to, when I started, I started in photojournalism, and I'd been to, I covered Vietnam and Beirut and the Middle East, Palestinian camps, and I'd been in Africa photographing for Save the Children Fund in 1972 or 73, I can't remember now. And the famine existed then. Yeah. And the pictures were almost too horrific to be used. A lot of the media wouldn't use them. So when I had the opportunity to get involved with Bob, after the BBC film came out from another part of Ethiopia, but the same kind of imagery, I was delighted, yeah. But none of us knew, on the day, none of us knew if everybody would turn up. Bob's a very forceful character. Yeah, they're all going to come, Duran, Spandau, Bono, they'll all turn up. But I remember Paula Yates, who was a great friend of mine, sort of waiting by the door, looking anxious. And I said, you okay? And she said, well, we don't know who's going to turn up, but I'm waiting for George. And I went, oh, God. She adored George.
So Paula was ready. That's who she wanted to see. That's who she was most excited about. That's interesting.
That was really her, as long as George is coming along. And she said to me on the day, you do realize that you and I are the only, we know them all because you photographed most of the people coming, if not all of them.
Right.
And I've interviewed them for the TV show, but they don't know each other. So that's going to be quite a thing because, are they going to get along? What are the egos going to be like? And so there was a lot of what if, maybe, what's going to happen. But of course, what happened was that everyone came in, they kind of looked at each other, kind of worked out, okay, we're fine. And in the end, we managed to get them all into the group shot. And
it's like herding cats, probably.
It was herding more than cats.
Very famous cats who aren't used to being around other famous cats. Like, that's a whole thing.
And they didn't know each other. The funniest thing was Sting walked in with a raincoat and a Sunday newspaper under his arm, sat right down in the middle. And I knew Sting very well. And that made me laugh. And then one or two other people wandered in, and then they all started talking. And we could not stop them talking to each other. And in the end, I think it was one of Paula's famous whistles and telling them to shut up and look at the camera. And I think we got 5 frames. I was up the stepladder with the camera. And then they all started talking again. And you knew from that point, wow, this is going to work out because they're competitive, but they're actually enjoying meeting each other. And through that, I shot everything throughout the day, in the recording studio. And that was joyful because to hear George was in the background, a lot of the time. He was kind of, you could see in the pictures. And there are a lot of pictures from that day. He's kind of wearing an odd sweater and he's not looking particularly cool. And he's hovering in the background looking at Simon Le Bon or Sting or Bono. But when it came to going into the booth, wow, I mean, that voice. And then I think that was one of the critical things of that day, other artists respecting the voice when they hear it. And you could see by the end of the day, he was well in the mix and happy to be there.
Did it feel like history being made? I mean, that song ended up being a huge success and inspired other things like it. Like it was the beginning of that in some ways.
In retrospect, you kind of look back, and I've said quite a lot of times, I think it changed everything in the music business because it was a unique day. But on the day, it didn't feel that way.
Right.
And you have to, it was all very last minute. Everyone was rehearsing the lyrics and trying to get it right. The harmonies, Midge was driving around crazy going, try this, try. So I think it was just done in such a short space of time that it was not on the day that you realized it was going to be successful. I think it was 24 hours later, when the pictures published and the momentum gathered and you suddenly thought, wait, this has caught the public imagination here. It was on the front page of the newspapers and media. It was just suddenly it took off and we know the result. And it did change everything. I mean, I've covered Live Aid, Live 8, Net Aid, Sport Aid, and Live Aid 30. So I think that's probably the last one that will ever take place. But Live 8 was an extraordinary event as well, in Hyde Park.
And was that the last time you photographed George? Live 8?
The last time was Live 8.
Yeah.
And I had a list of everyone that was going to appear. And I said at the time to my assistant, we are not going to get Pink Floyd. You know, everyone else may be.
Right.
But I'm not sure we're going to get Floyd because of the politics of it all. If that day flowed beautifully, I mean, beautifully. People came into the studio to be photographed who weren't even appearing on stage, like David and Victoria Beckham. You know, lots of people came in just to be photographed. And it was a joyful day for me. Also meeting people, you know, again, that you'd photographed, hadn't seen for a while. But I was in this studio area, and a guy came in to say hello who looked after Roxy Music, and a guy called Mark Fennick, and he came in and shook hands. Haven't seen you for a while. How's it going? Are they all behaving, coming in? I said, because everyone knew there was a timesheet if you can get in to do a picture. And I said, yeah, so far, brilliant. I said, the only thing, I'd love to have a full house, but I think I'm not going to get I'm not going to get Floyd. And he went, why not? And I said, well, you know, they never photographed. And you know, he said, listen, I'm looking after it. I'll get Floyd in. And sure enough, the band came in, and I took the last pictures of Pink Floyd, the lineup of Pink Floyd. So I was made up. And we got to the end of the day, and my assistant said to me, he'd been ticking off the names, and it was a huge list. And, you know, it was just a euphoric moment. But Peter Blake came in to be photographed. And then I said, well, it's unbelievable. And he said, we haven't got a full house. And I said, surely we have. We must have. And he went, no, you haven't got George Michael. You're kidding me. He went, no, you haven't got George. I went, oh, no. Because I took for granted, you know, I'd get George. I said, can you... And we dismantled half the studio setup.
Right.
And I was standing there kind of thinking, I don't know quite what to do. We're right at the end of the show where, you know, it's everyone's going, leaving. And George walked in. I'm ready. Sat on the box. I think we did about 8 frames. And I went, oh, that was a close run thing. I didn't think you were going, yeah, sorry it was late. But anyway, you got it, yeah? And I went, yeah, thanks, mate. And that was the last time.
That was the last time. You've photographed so many famous people, big stars. What is it about your personality that makes you move through that world in the way that you've been able to?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I always wanted to be a photojournalist, as I said to you just now.
Right.
But that was my passion. I covered Northern Ireland troubles for over a couple of years, and that really set me on the road to make me think that's exactly what I want to do with my life. But I got very disillusioned after the second time that I went to Vietnam. It was right at the end of the war, and I came out a couple of days before Saigon fell. And the pictures, everyone lost interest, you know. As soon as the NVA took Saigon, it's like everybody switched off, particularly in the American market.
Right.
And I got very disillusioned about it. And I'd had loads of offers to do photograph models. I hated fashion. That's the last thing I wanted to do. I thought it was the most tiresome part of photography. I still believe today, really true photography is photojournalism.
Right.
I was very, I'll try my hand at some of the modeling thing, and I didn't like it. And then one of my pals, who was in the music business as a PR, he was just starting out. He was a young guy in an office that had very established artists, including the Stones. He called me and he said, look, we got this act coming in from New York. We're calling it the Punk Princess. Will you do a session? You know, a press session for us. And I said, sure, yeah, get her into the studio. And I was beginning to get those calls, you know, from odd PRs and, do you want to photograph my artist? And it was 76 or 77, I think. And the business was really, really, in Britain, you know, it was beginning to generate some interesting artists. And that punk princess was Debbie Harry.
Wow. And
she came into my East London studio where no one in London wanted to come there because it was a rundown area, you know, and all that. She didn't care because she was from the village.
Right.
And that changed everything. I shot Debbie, and I look back on the session, it's very basic, but she was wonderful. And when she left, when we got on, I thought she was just brilliant individual. I thought, I could maybe do a bit more of this because I really loved that. And
yeah.
I like the pictures, got great feedback about the pictures. She liked the pictures. I thought, no, let's stick with it for a while. And then I'll go back.
I'll go back to some other war-torn place or something.
Yeah, I'll go back to but let's have a break for a few years, couple of years, 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And of course, that coincided with the music business exploding in the UK.
Right.
And suddenly I'm getting will you photograph the Jam? Will you photograph Clash? It just went on and on. And then, of course, I think 81 or 2, I got asked to come into America to photograph the Stones in secret rehearsals in Boston, near Boston. And it just kind of took a momentum that there was no going back from. I did go back with Bob after Band-Aid. We went back to Ethiopia and Mozambique to check everything out. So I had my taste of going back into it, for a little while. But, never went back as I said I would.
Yeah.
But I've got no regrets because I've had a wonderful time photographing some brilliant people and getting to meet them on a very intimate level, which you just don't get normally in life.
When you photograph bands, usually it's like 4 or 5 men. Is it like, okay, how do I put them this time? Like, what are the configurations? Because I just know as a fan picking up an album cover and it's 4 guys and, because that's who it is. But how do you think of that configuration? Because you do a lot of it, I would imagine, if you're doing what you do.
Yeah, it became more difficult, I think, as when you got a lot more artists, together.
Yeah. But
3 or 4. I mean, I was about 16, I think, when I photographed the Beatles in a local place in London. And I hark back to that. I didn't want to be doing it. I was working for a local paper, and they sent me along to this ballroom in London where a lot of artists appeared, including the Beatles. I photographed them there twice. And the first session I did with them, I had no idea what I was doing, but they'd done quite a few sessions by that point, and I asked them to sort of put their heads together closely,
right,
which they did. And then they did a shot where all 4 of them looked different ways. And that's the picture I really liked. And I thought, well, if I do this again, I'm going to think about that. And I thought about it forever.
Right. Because it comes up over and over again, I would imagine.
Yeah. And so it just, again, that intimacy, I think, and eye contact is really important. So I've never wanted to make people look unpleasant. I always try to flatter people.
Right.
So we'd get the lighting. I managed to get the lighting to a point where I liked it and it was flattering. And I'd get people to put their heads together, which they weren't being asked to do a lot. And you ask guys, they're manly and
of course,
all of that stuff. But you kind of break that barrier and kind of, no. Put your heads together, and now look this way, look that way. And you can. It's amazing how you can produce different kind of combinations by starting at that point. And so that's how it evolved, really. I mean, I met Simon Le Bon recently at a party, and he came over and he gave me a hug and he went, "Hey, guys, this is the one. This is the guy that taught us how to pose."
That's amazing. That might be the pull quote for this episode. That's so good.
That was a lovely moment. This is the guy. And I used to use reflectors a lot. And I was in a restaurant having dinner years ago, and I got a tap on the shoulder. And it was Pete Townsend from The Who. And
right.
He'd taken the silver foil out of the cigarette packet and was holding it under his chin. And he said, "How you doing? I just didn't think you recognized me without this."
That's hilarious. They're doing shtick around your photography. That's amazing. You mentioned Bob Geldof earlier. You photographed his wedding, and so many of the stars of the day were there. And what I love about those pictures is they're just like being little wisecrackers at the wedding. They're like mischievous. They have this mischief to them, which is different than a publicity photo. Talk about those wedding pictures.
Well, it's you can't have a wedding with Bob and Paula and not have mischief. I mean, it was just the red gown, the Jasper Conran gown. The wedding dress. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, you've got David Bowie saying, let's all put a handkerchief and cry because we've lost her, because they all loved, Paula was so loved here, I mean, really adored. It breaks my heart what happened to Paula. I mean, it was just one of the saddest days. But, when you've got Bowie doing that and you've got George in the background again hiding away, it was just hysterical. And, of course, artists love to sing, play music, and they love working together. So the party in the evening was absolutely hysterical, with everyone wanting to get up and, get involved. And I was lucky enough to be able to shoot the whole thing throughout the whole day and long night. It was great fun.
You mentioned Paula, and I don't know the story. I didn't follow her. It wasn't, I guess, as big of news here in the U.S. But what happened to her?
Well, Paula was brilliant at TV, interviewing, writing. She was very, very talented lady. And I shot a lot of fashion-y pictures because it was her. We would go, we'd go away. We went all over the place to shoot fashion-y pictures. She was just a huge energy and great to photograph. Never touched a drop of alcohol, never took drugs. I think my favorite quote was one of my friends is a PR that looked after her, and he said that the most indulgent I've ever seen Paula is to have 2 cream buns in the afternoon with a cup of tea when she came into the office. But she met Michael Hutchence, and it all went downhill from there, I'm afraid.
Right. Okay. Now I'm connecting the dots. Yeah. Okay.
You got it now?
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. I had heard the name, but it just wasn't top of mind. And I thought my listeners are going to hear this and go, wait, what? And so we followed up with that. You photographed George live in concert. Where are you usually when those things are happening? Are you right at the foot of the stage? Are you at the side? Do you move around? How do you approach a live performance?
Foot of the stage, really. I mean, I've been at the side, but it never, you'll get something maybe coming off stage there, but it's not worth it. You need time for live pictures. You need to be in that pit from start to finish because you need time to catch those moments. Luckily for me, I think the photojournalism really gave me a start because I'm pretty quick on the camera. I can use it fast.
Right.
That's what you need to do with live. You need to anticipate the moments and really, really concentrate and not be distracted by anything. So you need the time. So you get into that bit at the beginning and you stay there till the artist leaves the stage. That's the way I used to do it. And sometimes, you don't appreciate the moment as much as the audience because you're so concentrated on looking for that image.
Yeah.
You're not going to experience the show the way the audience does. There are moments, of course. I mean, I think, David Bowie and Annie Lennox at Live Aid, I was at the foot of the microphone there, and I did appreciate what went on. And I've appreciated odd moments with George where I was able to suddenly pick up how the crowd were. He was a mesmerizing artist with that voice, one of the greatest voices in my opinion.
Do you have a favorite George Michael song?
Sorry?
Do you have a favorite George Michael song? Do you have a favorite of his songs?
No, I can't pick a favorite. I wouldn't want to do that. I prefer the kind of emotional lyrics rather than the wham, bam, thank you, ma'am stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I wouldn't pick one. I mean, it's just the quality of his performance and the voice was really special, I mean, I've told the story, and I hope you haven't heard it before, but I went with David Bowie to the rehearsals for the Nelson Mandela concert.
Right.
And David performed, as you know, he performed with Annie, and that was quite a special moment. And the artists all around at that rehearsal studio were really with him all the way, and standing in the wings was George singing along with... Sorry, what did I say? The Nelson Mandela? It wasn't. It was, the Freddie Mercury tribute.
Oh, the Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury tribute.
Yeah.
So he was singing along with every word, every part of that lyric. in the shadows. And I was there with David, so I couldn't really take pictures of George or Elton or Paul McCartney. You know, that's not the way you work. But when David finished, George walked into the rehearsal, and all these kids kept coming on the back of the stage area, and it was the London Gospel Choir, but we didn't really know. And he performed, and I think it's on YouTube. Certainly Annie and David's performance is on YouTube, but George performed that song, and honestly, everyone, when he finished, was clapping and applauding. All his peers, you know,
right.
Which is quite a tribute. But when I was in the pit, when he performed it on stage at the tribute, it was exactly, there was as much energy and emotion into that performance on stage as there was in the rehearsal room.
Right. And this is Somebody to Love, when he sang Somebody to Love. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Magic, with that gospel choir behind.
Yeah, iconic.
Absolutely iconic. Well, there were two iconic performances, because I think the Bowie Lennox performance was also truly iconic.
Yeah.
So they were back to back in that rehearsal studio, and you know, to see them on stage, and it was exactly to the level that they performed in. And you don't, sometimes that's not the case. It was magical, and that's because every time I think he got behind the mic, he gave it absolutely 1,000%.
Yeah. My memory is that might have been during that time when he was having trouble with his record company. I could be wrong about that. But like, this performance felt, for a fan, it felt like, oh, we're getting something from George, you know, and it was, we were so pleased to get it, because he had been kind of away, I think, is my memory of it. When you're photographing musicians, do you have music playing in the studio, or does it depend?
Never.
Never. Interesting.
I mean, sometimes you're asked, you know, can we have music? And I'd say no.
That's interesting.
We had a sign on it. We put this sign up on the outside of the door. No egos in the studio other than the artist. So we never had. I hated the idea that they'd be asked for a photograph or a picture together. Or I hated sycophantic behaviour. So
right.
The hair, makeup. Sometimes, you know, people doing the other work. You know, they can be a bit tricky. So I always work with the same people because I trusted them implicitly, and I think that is something the artist becomes aware of.
Right.
But if you have music in the studio, I mean, it's all great for films and, you know, videos when you see this kind of. But you want to be able to communicate with the person you're photographing. Well, you can't do that if you've got music blasting out in the background.
Right.
So it was definitely no music in the studio.
Yeah. Did you notice a difference with George from when he was still not open about his sexuality versus when after that had all come out and he had owned it and had stepped into it so inspiringly, at least from my vantage point? Did you notice a difference in him, more freedom or anything like that, or was he always the same?
For me, I mean, he was pretty much always the same, but I think that, you know, you were talking about a period of time covering 30 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we were all growing up, you know. I mean, I photographed a very young man with Wham.
Yeah.
And by the time we reached to the latter stages of Live Aid and all that stuff, you see the person grow up in front of you.
Yeah.
Become a man, really, you know, from almost a young teenage boy to a man.
Yeah.
And I think the man finally was the one that stayed there, you know, through to the end.
Yeah.
Was a very different individual to the one that I photographed in the 80s, 87, in that period. So I think my period of time that I was familiar with George, I think he was no different at the end to the way he was from 85 after Wham, 84, 85 after Wham.
Right.
You see, also the sexual thing, that never arose. That never came into play at all when I knew George. You know, it was something that never, ever entered my head and the people we work with. You know, it's hard to explain this, but you want to just keep everything on a friendship basis, as friendly as you can, and I've never wanted to intrude on people's lives.
Right.
That's nothing to do with the side of that person I'm photographing. You know, I think they totally should remain detached.
I read in the book, and it wasn't your writing, somebody else was writing, but that if George knew he had a photo shoot coming up, he would not eat, or like he really cared about how he looked and his body. What do you remember about George's relationship with his body and those ideas?
Well, I'd not written that part of the book.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be aware, other than that when he came into the studio, he was incredibly well prepared.
Right.
Without question. I mean, he wanted to look, I don't know, I always flattered people, I've always tried to flatter people with my photography. And I think perhaps one of the reasons he came back to me was that, he liked the way I photographed him.
Yeah.
But it was never a problem, I mean, he always came in very well prepared. He never looked to me like he'd gone on a diet. I mean, he always looked pretty fit to me.
Right.
Latter days may be different, but certainly not in the period that I photographed him. But he was always well prepared. He had pretty distinctive ideas about fashion and what he would want to wear. That's great, because you're not actually put on the back foot trying to be asked to suggest things to wear. So that was never an issue. He had a good team around him. His sister was there at a lot of the shoots. So he had a comfort blanket, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah.
And I think that's really very sensible. If those people are very close to you, you trust them, because this is so much about trust, I said to you earlier, it's an intimidating thing to be doing.
Yeah.
And if you've got people around you trust, it becomes less so. And it becomes slightly easier,
Right.
I think that's important. I mean, first time I photographed Madonna, she came into the studio with about, 5 guys from New York, probably her dancers.
Right.
And that, in a way, that was her support system, I think it's good if someone comes in with someone they trust, and then they can come in and be close to you, and they feel confident enough.
Yeah, I'm a huge Madonna fan as well, and she always strikes me as someone who's very comfortable in front of the camera. Is that what you observe from like she's got this? Like that's what I observe as a fan.
No, 100%. Yeah. I mean, at Live Aid, she came up, and she had the dancers around, but we had like allocated 10 minutes or something for each artist. And she came up, and it's great to see you. I want to be photographed with Bob. And I said, listen, Bob's pretty busy at the moment, No, we've got to find him. Let's get on the walkie-talkies because I want to do pictures with Bob. And, of course, Bob turned up to do the pictures. And, they're fooling around in the shots and having fun. And so, she was extremely confident. And I love that. That's magical.
But also she knew that it's good to get her shot of her with Bob for this thing. Like there was a savviness to her that comes through in that story, too. That's not gone away. No,
has
it hasn't. She's still inspiring to me. Like I appreciate her because I've just, she's been the soundtrack of my life in so many ways. I just have a few more questions. What's your first memory of photography, that it was a thing?
When I was at school, I loved art. I mean, I absolutely loved it, but I was terrible. I mean, I couldn't draw a straight line. I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I liked art so much, but I was hopeless. And I think the art teacher at the time, when I was about 14, took pity on me. But I think he recognized I used to do collages quite well. And I think he recognized that maybe I had an eye for composition.
Mm.
Composition, is one of the absolutely critical things in photography. People ask me, what camera do you use? What lens was it? And I say, it's irrelevant. What camera was it? It's irrelevant. The camera should be almost a part of you. You shouldn't be thinking about the camera.
Right.
The only thing that matters about photography is the eye behind the viewfinder making the composition. That's the key. And it doesn't matter what type of photography it is. You've got to compose the image. It's so critically important. And I think the art teacher realized I was frustrated at not being able to, paint, draw, whatever. And he said to me, look, why don't you join the photographic club?
Right.
And I said, oh, okay, I'll give it a go. I have no idea. I didn't have a camera. But I joined the photographic club, and I can remember, and there's a picture in another book I've done of me, and someone took a picture of me in the darkroom when I was 14 by the enlarger, where you used to, we were on film and you used to print with an enlarger and then develop the prints. And as soon as that happened, it just took hold of me. I loved it. And I asked my father, could you buy me a camera? He had no idea about cameras, and he bought me a 35mm camera, which was quite avant-garde then.
Yeah.
And I got some film, and I started taking pictures and getting them developed, and it just took off from there. I never looked back. I absolutely loved it. I loved the magic of not knowing that you got the picture, and then suddenly you get your film back and you go through, do some prints and realize, I did get that. I didn't think I got it, but I did. And I loved it. Photographed all my friends, it bored the pants off of everybody saying, oh, come on, let's do some pictures.
Yeah.
But that's how it started. Yeah.
I love that.
I was hopeless though at art. And listen, one other funny thing.
Yeah.
I lived near a stately home in North London, and they had the self-portrait of Rembrandt as one of their key images. And it's absolutely a picture I loved. And as soon as I could, I got a background painted for the studio, which is exactly the same as the background in the Rembrandt picture. It's like a brown canvas, and I got one painted, and I've used it for everything, including Band-Aid and Live Aid.
Right.
I've got it stored in a box because at Live Aid, one of the band members came in to do their group shot, and he wrote all over it that they were there. We was here. And, so it was pristine, but then suddenly it's got this kind of penta, we was here. And I've kept that in a box ever since, as it really is special for me.
Yes. Do you know who did it? Do you know who the graffiti person was?
See if you can guess.
Were they a famous, like a frontman, or more like a drummer or something?
Very famous rock band, top hat. Slash.
Oh, really? Slash did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. See, Americans ruin everything. He's American, right? Yes, of course.
No comment.
No comment. Then please. I'm so sorry about everything. All right. We're going to wrap it.
He lay on the floor, and my assistant said, he's laying on the floor now. I said, yeah, I'll shoot some shots. And laying on the floor. What I didn't realize, because I turned away, went back to the camera, to the tripod, where I take the camera off the tripod to go and take these casual shots. And he got up and they left, and my assistant said, I think he's just written all over the background. I went, you're kidding me. Get it off. And he said, I don't think I'm going to be able to. And he just wrote, we was spelled W-O-Z, here.
Slash. That's so on brand. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Tell people
it's rock and roll. That's fine.
Yeah. Tell people how's the best place to learn about your books, to buy your books, to learn about your other stuff that you've got going on. This is a Rizzoli book, so you're in anywhere you could get Rizzoli books.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know about the. Yeah, it's Rizzoli there. A great publisher. I mean, I guess Amazon. It became quite a. It was a bestseller on last week. I think it was #1 in the photographic books on Amazon.
Right on.
So I guess Amazon and the regular bookshops.
Awesome.
It's doing well, and I'm very happy. I'm just pleased for the fans because they've been so appreciative and so delightful, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
It's a big thrill to know that you're getting through to the real, proper, genuine George Michael Lovelies.
Yes, and which I consider myself one. My favorite picture in the book is with the lasers, because I don't think I'd seen that before. There's these shots later and with the lasers. And there's something about the way it's composed, and he's in there, and it's great. It's beautiful.
It's a popular image, and it's different. And that was off a video where they were using lasers on the video.
Yes.
I think it's an easier affair, if I remember rightly. And my memory is terrible, by the way. But
that's all right. You're doing amazing.
But that's one of my favorite pictures.
Yeah.
It's different. It's something kind of unusual.
Yeah.
And I like that,
Yeah.
That was a difficult shoot. I shot a lot of stuff with those lasers, and oh wow, are they difficult? But you can get lucky, and photography sometimes is about that moment of luck.
Right. You just capture the shot. Two more questions. Why do you take pictures?
Do you know, I don't. The interesting thing is, I'm not one who carries the camera around all the time.
Right.
I've got my phone, and
Right.
of course I guess that's the cop out, that I do occasionally take the phone out and take a shot. But I've never been one to carry the camera around and shoot everything that moves.
Right.
I was like that when I was 16, 17, but that went away as I got into professional photography.
Right.
But the problem is, if you give me a camera, and my wife can bear witness to this, I actually become impossible, because that's it. I'm off. And you give me the camera and I will photograph and photograph and photograph. I love it. So I'm quite disciplined at not carrying the camera around all the time.
Why do you love it? What is it?
It's just something. I mean, I also believe it's important not to, because I think you must have visual memories. I hate the idea of seeing that sea of arms go up, at every event, sporting.
Right. Yeah.
And you're missing the moment. So I wouldn't dream of doing that. And I think that's rather sad.
Right.
And we see it an awful lot now.
Sure.
And you're not, and that memory is not in you've got a different memory. I like the idea that you do carry some memories and not photographs.
Yeah.
In fact, I read, I'm not going to pay justice to the individual, but it was a quote I saw the other day from a photographer saying, I'm going to write a book about the photographs I didn't take.
I love that.
They're the ones in my memory bank. And I thought that was lovely. And I'm sorry that I can't remember this very European photographer, fashion photographer. I thought that was a wonderful quote,
Yeah. Here's my final question. The book is Celebrating George, 3 Decades of George Michael Through the Lens, all these amazing photographs you took. What was it like putting it together? What emotions did you feel? Because I feel like George Michael, for me, I think the sadness around his loss for me is that I feel like he was a man who understood what was important, what mattered. Yeah. Like he had good, and yet it wasn't enough in some ways. And I think that's what touches me about him. And then you hear that voice, and it's all in his voice, right?
Absolutely.
What was it like for you putting this together? What did it bring up for you? What did it mean to you?
Well, when I go back into the archive, I mean, all the time, because we get requests for pictures all the time, and I have to go back and look and dig them out, and we scan them, and so it's reaching back into the past. But Matthew, who does my techie stuff, always says to me, it's hysterical. He'll say to me, "I've got this, request for a picture of Tina Turner. When was it? Or where was it?" And I'll say, "Well, it was in the studio." "Well, when was it?" "Oh, well, it wasn't that long ago, probably, 95. No, it was 85. I've got no concept of time. My memory's not great, but when it comes to my photographs, I can remember everything about them, but I can't necessarily put them into a time frame.
Right.
And so everything for me is recent. So
right.
It's amazing when I go back, and I had to start with we'd scanned all the George stuff.
Right.
And then we started to, because I designed the book and put the book together with Matthew. So we started on it, and suddenly it kicks in. Wow. Do you realize how long ago that was?
Yeah. And
then it really does take me, I kind of sit there for a few minutes and kind of go, how can it be that long ago? That's over 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that hits you hard. You kind of think, wow, where has this time flown to? Your phone is just gone,
Yeah.
And I think my compensation for that is I kind of think everything was yesterday.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
It's quite a roller coaster of a trip when you're doing it. And we rearranged the pictures in the book at least 3 times because I got dates wrong. Matt had to go back and check every date. No, right. You got that wrong. It wasn't then. So hysterical. I mean, really quite funny but I loved laying out the book. I've done about, I must have done 5 or 6 books now. And every single one of them has been a learning curve, and I've loved it. And the George one I'm particularly pleased with. I mean, the publishers were brilliant. They changed very little in the layout. They changed the cover. The American Americans wanted slightly different cover than the one we did. That was fine. I like the cover. Everyone loves the cover, so that's good. But the rest of the book, they barely changed. They wanted me to add one or two images, but other than that, the book remains the way we designed it. So that's a big thrill.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. And he means so much to people, and to have this beautiful thing to look at and to remember, it's just a gift. So thank you for doing the book, and thank you for this wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed hearing all your stories. It's been just really delightful.
Oh, and for me to talk to you, thank you so much for asking. And I'm really delighted you like the book, and that's very pleasing for me.
Yeah, I'm going to be listening to George Michael for a few weeks now, I think. I'm going to bring him up. Yeah, awesome. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thanks again to Brian Aris. Pick up his beautiful book, Celebrating George, 3 Decades of George Michael Through the Lens. It's from Rizzoli, and you can get it probably anywhere fine books are sold. Okay, so this happened. I've been talking about the play that I wrote, which is now called The Point of Pinecones. And if you see it, you'll understand why that title is the title. But so, yeah, I'm doing it in the Fringe Festival in June. 3 shows, staged reading, June 7th, 14th, and the 21st. I got in at the last minute that you could do it. We're kind of going for it. And I've locked down my cast, and I'm very excited about it. And, you know, it's when you're putting together things like this, like there'll be a day where you get like some rejection emails or some bad news, or, you know, I tried to do a post on one of the breakdown services, and they wouldn't let me. And so it was just kind of like, oh, it's not going well. And then the next day, like 3 things fell into place. So it's a roller coaster, but I'm very excited. And my friend Grant, the Fringe has this policy where they don't want you to use AI in creative ways in mounting your shows. And I have backdrop slides that play in the show, and I did use AI to create them for the original reading. And so I want to honor the rules, and I appreciate the sentiment of that, absolutely. And so I reached out to an artist friend of mine that I've known since the early 90s named Grant Schaffer. He's a brilliant artist. He worked a lot in storyboards. He storyboarded a lot of Madonna videos and all kinds of films. And he does his own art, which is amazing. And he lives in New York and part-time in Scotland. He is partners with Alan Cumming. And so they spent some time over there. And he was in town several months ago, and I told him all about the play, and I was kind of all excited about it. And he was really a receptive listener. I think he related to a lot of the themes because we're about the same age. And so I reached out to him and I said, I don't want to use AI for this. Is there something in your world that storyboard artists use? Is there a platform where we could create something that's kind of artful and cool but isn't an AI thing? And so he sent me a few sketches, and you guys, it's so cool. It's kind of got this take on me, aesthetic, you know, that video where it was kind of line drawings and pencil sketches, and then we're using these pops of color. There's an 80s vibe to the whole thing, to the show. There's this piece of music that I'm obsessed with that I want to use, but I probably won't have the rights. So another friend of mine, Tom Goss, sent me, like, I told him, you know, my vision and sent him the song, and he sent me 40 seconds of a track that is evocative of that. Not a total carbon copy, but it's like, I don't know. After a day of getting bad emails, I got 3 great ones in a row. So anyway, that's the journey. So you can learn about it at hollywoodfringe.org. The show is called The Point of Pinecones. And as soon as I get my act together, I'm going to have links in my Instagram and things like that. I haven't really started plugging it yet because we were trying to lock down all the stuff. But it's going to be happening. And I'm going to be directing it. And the cast is Felix Pyre, Nadia Ginsburg, Sebastian Dino, Barbara Deutsch. Dulce Valencia is going to be reading the stage directions. And there's a role that I was trying to find somebody for. And in 2010, I think it was, I made a short film called Rub Down about a guy going undercover at a spa because they had reports that the masseurs weren't following the modesty guidelines. And so Jamie Fouth is the actor that played the lead in that. And he just did a submission through like Actors Access and stuff like that. And I loved working with Jamie, and he did a great job in it. And I was going through Instagram and I was like, I wonder if Jamie could be Ken, because he teaches school now. He's still into acting, but he has another, job. And I reached out and I said, are you still interested in acting? I've written this play. And he was all about it, and he was available, and he read it, and he loved it. And it's like, we were talking on the phone, and I was like, oh, I love working with Jamie, and it's been 16 years. And I'm like, oh, okay. So Jamie's going to be in it. He's a little young for the character, but oh well. We do have a joke about how the character has the best moisturizers money can buy. So maybe that'll cover it. Anyway, things are kind of coming together, and then there's days when you have setbacks, but you keep going. And I just keep thinking about something my playwriting teacher, Bernardo Cubrias, said when he was talking about putting together things that are sort of labors of love, where people aren't getting paid, and they're just doing it for the love and the passion, or maybe they believe in the piece or whatever. And he goes, when you're reaching out for people like that, if it's not a fuck yeah, move on. So if people are like, well, I don't know, and I have this thing, no, move on. You gotta have people that are like, fuck yeah, for this, for these kinds of things, because there aren't other rewards, other enticements. It's just the way it is, and that has stayed with me as I've been trying to put the pieces together. And everyone in the mix now is a fuck yeah, and I'm thrilled about that. So I will keep you posted. It's going to be a whole thing. So yeah, that's enough for this week. I want to give a shout out to Oscar Rosario for mixing the episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Placement Music. Catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye.